Welcome to PW Only IS English channel. In the news analysis for 19th of March 2025, we are going to see these news issues. Supreme Court judges to visit Manipur relief camps. EC relents. Election Commission of India has finally agreed to hear pleas to upload the booth-wise voter turnout data on the petition filed by Association of Democratic Reforms. Then in another issue, Election Commission sets the ball rolling on linking voter ID card with the Aadhaar. In this news analysis, we are going to see the relevant sections of the Representation of People's Act which authorize the Election Commission of India to link Aadhaar data with the voter ID card data, so as to avoid the duplication that has recently been in news due to West Bengal, due to various states of India witnessing duplicate voter ID cards bearing the same voter ID card number. Now, before we begin, I would like to tell you about NSAT UPSC PW scholarship test. This test is going to be held on 23rd of March in both online mode as well as offline mode. For the offline, Karol Bagh, Mukherjee Nagar, the two centers in New Delhi, Lucknow, Patna, Prayagraj, Indore and Jaipur. Test will be held in the offline mode at all these centers. Both the online and the offline mode are available. You can register yourself today as the slots are filling fast. 2.5 crore rupees worth of scholarship pool is there. That means the students who will be scoring well in this scholarship test will be able to avail the free admission, etc., the benefits that are there. UPSC welcome kit will be there, essential kit is there, that will help you streamline your UPSC preparation. This is your moment to enroll yourself and to streamline your preparation insofar as UPSC civil services exam is concerned. Moving further to the news analysis. Supreme Court judges to visit Manipur relief camps. I have incorporated only the screenshot and this first image here. Isn't it a case of judicial overreach? What we understand by overreach is that judges are now going to visit the relief site, even though this is a part of the exercise of National Legal Services Authority to see if the victims, if the people who have been at the receiving end of the riots between cookies and metis, they have been habilitated properly or they have been given the shelter at least. But isn't it a case of judicialization of governance? Is it not a case of judicial overreach? Until now, we were seeing the judges uh, not interfering but intervening in every matter of public life. You talk about electoral reforms, you talk about DDA flats allocation, you talk about water, you talk about air, you talk about anything under the sky or even beyond the sky. Judges were intervening. But now, field visits have also started. We have seen that one of the judges, the CJI of India, who just retired, Ranjan Gogoi, sitting in Rajya Sabha as a nominated member of parliament. We have seen one of the judge who got retired as the CJI being appointed as the governor of the state of Kerala. Now we are seeing the judges doing a field visit. Why this happens? Judicialization of governance happens primarily due to abdication of responsibility on the part of the government. When the governments are malignant in the politics that they do not control the riots, then applying the doctrine of separation of powers or doctrine of checks and balances, judiciary starts intervening. But this seems to be too far-fetched when it comes to judges visiting the Manipur relief camp. So this can be noted down as an example. My polity class students would be able to correlate, and many of you who have been listening to the news analysis regularly would be able to correlate as to field visits by judges are unwarranted. CBI monitoring of CBI inquiries, investigations by the courts, special investigation team is constituted by the courts these days. Almost everything is being observed, or you can say supervised, by the judiciary these days. But now the field visits is a new phenomena. Okay, now at the ground level also, judiciary is in a way stepping onto the ground of administration, the ground of review, which is a new phenomena, I believe. Now moving to the next article. Election Commission finally relents in the Supreme Court. It has agreed to hear pleas to upload the booth-wise turnout. What actually happened? What triggered the Association of Democratic Reforms, that is an NGO behind this ruling now, behind this agreement by the Election Commission of India, that it has agreed to upload the data, the constituency, the booth wise data, not only constituency but the booth wise data on its website, duly authenticated, scanned and legible account of the voters, of the votes recorded booth wise after each phase of polling. What actually happened? This thing had happened. Stand of the petitioner, the NGO, Association of Democratic Reforms, which has done commendable job when it comes to the section of or arena of electoral reforms in a country like ours. Okay, so it has filed multiple petitions. Electoral reforms based petitions have been filed by ADR to release the criminal antecedents of the politicians, elected by the political parties made to contest elections despite having number of FIRs against them. Then the Nota ruling you can talk about, none of the above option. So now this same NGO had filed a petition raising doubts about the authenticity of the polling data due to inordinate delay in publishing voter turnout details. Why there was inordinate delay in publishing the voter turnout details after 2024 Lok Sabha elections? This was the question raised by ADR. One of the questions was this. Second question was why there was a sharp spike in the figures from the initial figures uploaded on the website. So this was the trend, but suddenly we saw that in the same constituency, let's say constituency A, now the number of voter turnout figures saw this kind of a hockey stick pattern or L pattern, inverted L pattern. Why? So these are the doubts that were raised by Association of Democratic Reforms, asking the Supreme Court to intervene in the matter and ask the Election Commission of India to, from now onwards, to release the data booth wise. If the data would be released booth wise, it will have a sense of transparency. It will instill a sense of confidence in the minds of the voters, in the minds of the stakeholders like political parties, that yes, everything is fair and transparent. Article 324, the mandate given to the Election Commission of India is to ensure free and fair elections. Now, this freeness and fairness can't only be in silos, can't only be compartmentalized. It has to be perceived as such as well. Perception in the minds of the voter is equally important, even though the Election Commission is on a spree, on a mission to increase the voter turnout. But if the belief, if the trust in the system is eroding because of whatever kind of doubts being raised by ADR, etc., that will be a kind of backslide of electoral reform. So that is why the development according to ADR had rung this kind of a development where sharp spike was seen, inordinate delay was seen in releasing the voter turnout data. It had raised a kind of suspicion about the authenticity of the polling data. As we are becoming more and more civic in terms of our civic culture, citizenry's active participation, so you see the transparency agenda, this you see the transparency being injected into various governance institutions. Yesterday we talked about CAG, why CAG should be, appointment should be the sole prerogative of the government. Then a few days ago we talked about Central Election Commission members being appointed only by the government. So, how and why only the government should be a party to appointment of such constitutional bodies, members of such constitutional bodies. Now, talking about the statutory part here, Rule 49S and Rule 56C, Clause 2 of the Conduct of Election Rules 1961, that are formulated under Representation of People's Act 1952. Okay, these rules require the presiding officer to prepare an account of votes recorded in Form 17C, Part 1 format. So presiding officer being the district collector or SDM, if it is a small tehsil, it will be an SDM. They are required to prepare an account of votes. Even though the nomenclature, the vocabulary used here is Form 17C, etc. But everything is done in the digitized format these days. So it is not a big deal. Now booth-wise data will have to be captured. Okay, earlier Election Commission was resisting this move, saying that there is nothing in the rules. Okay, so Election Commission has always maintained that there is nothing in the rules that warrants Election Commission to release the data in the public domain. So that is why Election Commission was very adamant. Now Election Commission had to relent before the Supreme Court after the plea filed by plea filed by Association of Democratic Reforms. So this is there. A small issue, but yes, transparency is the heading for this topic. GS Mains Paper 2, Polity and Governance. Moving to the next topic, Election Commission sets the ball rolling on linking voter ID cards with Aadhaar. So now, to avoid duplication, citizens have to compromise with their privacy when it comes to matter of right to privacy in elections. Right to privacy, right to cast a vote, universal adult franchise is a constitutional right, right? So, are we supposed to have a fundamental duty kind of a thing, that now to exercise our constitutional right, we would have a kind of duty to link our Aadhaar card, because there is duplication of the voters' data, as has been observed in the electoral photo identity cards proliferating across various states in India having the same number. So if I'm having number 014205, same person is having, another person is having the same number 014205 in the state of Telangana. How is this possible? Now, to eradicate this malaise, Election Commission says that it would have to begin the technical consultation with the Unique Identification Authority of India, UIDAI, on this issue of linking both the data sets, so as to avoid such kind of a bogus voter ID cards. Now, the fault is not of the voters. Voters are duly getting themselves registered and getting their voter ID card made as well. But how can this happen? Okay, this is a fault on the part of Election Commission of India's working only insofar as the EPIC generation process is concerned. Okay, now this is there. What are the rules and statutory sections that empower the Election Commission to link the voter ID cards? These are the sections. We are going to talk about them in detail also. Sections 23 clause 4, 23 clause 5, 23 clause 6 of the Representation of People's Act 1950. So these are the sections that will be used by the Election Commission of India while proposing to link the EPIC's elector photo identity cards with the Aadhaar data, with the Aadhaar numbers. So this would be done under the provisions of Article 326, which says that voting rights can only be given to citizens. Okay, but Aadhaar, linking of Aadhaar, it's only again a doubt is there. Aadhaar is a kind of ID proof for not only citizens but also for anyone residing in the country. Aadhaar is not a proof of citizenship. Linking the data of the Aadhaar on with the EPIC, with the electoral photo identity card, which is given only to the residents, citizens of the country, okay, is going to have its own set of problems. But to fix the problem, sometimes you have to come up with the band-aid solutions also. Section 23 clause 4, so we are going to discuss these sections also. It grants the electoral registration officer, so ERO, the registration officer, the authority to require individuals to furnish their Aadhaar number for the purpose of establishing their identity. So this statutory empowerment is there with the Election Commission of India already. Section 23 clause 5, what does it say? It states that every person whose name is included in the electoral roll may intimate, it's not shall here. So here's the catch: I as a voter may or may not, may intimate his Aadhaar number to such authority in such form and manner as may be prescribed. Okay, so it's a choice given to me, because voter ID card data, it's, I mean, having my voter ID card, right to cast the vote is my right, and it is a right without any kind of strings attached. So how can you make the sacrifice of or the sharing of my biometric Aadhaar based data with the Election Commission? So that is the question here. Section 23 clause 6, it aims to balance the objective of improving the accuracy of electoral rolls through Aadhaar linkage with the protection of individuals' voting rights. It prevents the disenfranchisement of voters who, for legitimate reasons, cannot provide their Aadhaar details. So I have a legitimate reason that I don't want any kind of profiling of my community or myself alone. I don't want to share my data. So section 23 clause 6 is going to be another roadblock in the way of linking the voter ID data with Aadhaar. We are in the age of electronic surveillance. So, some citizens or ADR itself or anybody like Prashant Bhushan might file a PIL in the court saying that if this amendment is done to section 23 clause 6 to remove this blockade or to remove this roadblock in the way of linking Aadhaar with the voter ID card, okay, so that can be an issue for the government and Election Commission of India. Now the problem is, how can the duplicate voter ID cards be issued in the first place? This doesn't happen even in case of book publishing company which publishes books with various serial numbers. Okay, you talk about Amazon websites. The voter ID card numbers cannot be duplicate in the first place. Even if they are linked with the Aadhaar number, many Aadhaar cards are proliferating which are duplicate in their own realm. So how can you eradicate this problem? How can you issue Aadhaar? How can you say that Aadhaar is going to be a solution to this problem of duplication? Moving further, India takes 24th spot in free speech survey. So even though it is not a official report, but future of free speech, it's an independent US based think tank, has ranked India as 24 out of 33 nations that they have ranked, surveyed on the question of support for free speech. Okay, its report titled as Who in the World Supports Free Speech? Now, the report says that while the abstract, in mere words, the support for free speech remains strong, but commitment to protecting controversial speech is eroding in many parts of the world, including India. So, talking specifically about India, we'll then come to the global free speech trends. India's free speech status. India is ranked 24th. We have seen that with a score of 62.6. India is positioned between South Africa and Lebanon. We are not interested in all that. Now, what are the reasons it has found? A majority of Indians value free speech without government censorship. However, the support for criticizing government policies is below the global average. This means that an average Indian citizen believes that the freedom of free speech does not cover the criticize of the government. Okay, so this is, you may say that this is because of the fear factor, or this is maybe because of hero worshipping, etc. 37% of the Indian respondents support government restrictions on its own criticism, the highest among the surveyed countries. So this is, you can say, the chilling effect of sections like section 66A of IT, section 67, and Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, the misuse of the acts to curb the freedom of speech and expression in the past. India, the report says, is an exception to the general pattern of the world, across the world, showing a disconnect between public support for free speech and its actual protection. Okay, in the rest of the world, people believe that yes, it is their right to criticize the government. Criticizing government is a part of freedom of speech. But in India, this is not the case. Report says that this is an instance of democratic backsliding, with the declining political liberties, including freedom of speech and expression, being observed in India. Indians feel that their ability to speak freely has improved, while outside observers feel it has worsened. So, our ability to speak freely, maybe we are netizens, maybe many of the new additions to the 18 and above, they feel that they have a right to. The YouTubers, the people who are actively using social media platforms like X, we're talking about Twitter, etc. They feel that the mouse cracking, the netizens of the country feel that they have freedom to speak freely, but that does not cover the right to criticize the government. This is a kind of report. You can cite this report for the main purpose. No need to mug up this data because this is not relevant for prelims, as the reports, the data credibility, etc., since it is a US think tank, and we don't believe much in these type of think tanks anymore. And so is the case with UPSC also, when it comes to asking questions, factual questions out of these topics. Okay, now here, the survey conducted in October 2024 reveals a global trend of declining free speech support since 2021. Even the democratic nations like United States, Israel, and Japan have experienced significant drops in freedom of speech and expression. Scandinavia, particularly Norway and Denmark, leads the future of the free speech index. As is always the case, the Scandinavian countries, Finland, Norway, etc., they have always led the fray. Regional improvement. Indonesia, Malaysia, and Pakistan showed the most significant improvements, although they remain at the lower end of the ranking. So, this is all. Moving further, Supreme Court to see if Lokpal has power over the judges. A controversial judgment by the Lokpal, whereby the Lokpal declared that the judges of the High Court are public authorities, and hence Lokpal has got a jurisdiction over them. But when asked about the Supreme Court judges, Lokpal said that since Supreme Court judges are constitutional authorities and Supreme Court of India was created by the Constitution of India, so the judges of the Supreme Court are not under the ambit of Lokpal, whereas the judges of the High Court are under the ambit of the Lokpal, because High Courts are, they were a creation of the Statute, Government of India Act 1935. Since all the statutory bodies as per the jurisdiction of Lokpal are under the jurisdiction of the Lokpal. So the High Court judges, by virtue of the fact that they are creation of statute Government of India Act 1935, so High Court judges are under the jurisdiction of Lokpal, and Lokpal can hence initiate the inquiry against the conduct of the High Court judges. While we are debating about whether Lokpal has got jurisdiction of High Court judges or not, Supreme Court is going to entertain this matter. Supreme Court has in fact taken the suo motu cognizance of this matter. Supreme Court had on its own sent a notice to Lokpal and said that Supreme Court is going to take this matter into its cognizance. But the other important question is, what about the corruption in the High Court? What about the question that is there before the Lokpal? Because Supreme Court cannot entertain this. Government, the Parliament, it has been, the record has been such that none of the judges has ever been impeached. The worst thing to happen to a judge in case of blatant charges, prima facie, very strong charges of corruption are there. Even then, also, the worst thing that happens to the judge is the transfer order. God knows if the transfer will lead to the Ganga Snan of the judge. Will it get rid of all the allegations of corruption? Will he become pious, a purified soul, or what? So this is the problem we need to answer. Even though Supreme Court is going to save the skin of judiciary again by intervening in this matter and stopping the jurisdiction of the Lokpal, asking Lokpal to stop from entertaining such type of cases and declaring that High Court judges are not in the ambit of the Anti-Corruption Ombudsman of India. But who will answer the larger question? That's the point here. Now, this hearing is going to begin. This is just a preliminary thing. We have incorporated the background information, why high courts are within the jurisdiction of the Lokpal, what was the contention of the Lokpal, and what was the Supreme Court judgment. Supreme Court had established in one of its judgments of 1990s that the public authorities, the judges are, when it comes to Prevention of Corruption Act, the judges of the Supreme Court are also within the ambit of Prevention of Corruption Act. They are also public servants. Okay, Supreme Court judges and High Court judges, but are not public servants under the Lokpal Act. So this is the dilemma. If any authority is a public authority under Prevention of Corruption Act, which gives powers to the Lokpal, can Lokpal not initiate an inquiry when the corruption charges come up against that? Okay, so this is the problem here. Lokpal Act section 14 says that any person who comes within the ambit of section 14 clause 1 of the Lokpal Act will be the Lokpal will be having jurisdiction over that person. Okay, so that is the problem. There is a precondition to consult the Chief Justice of India before initiating the inquiry, a preliminary inquiry into a corruption charges lodged against an HC judge as per section 20. Section 14 says that the public authorities are covered. Section 20 of the same Lokpal Act says that just before even before initiating a preliminary inquiry, the Supreme Court judge's consultation is required before initiating the inquiry. So now let's see what the Supreme Court decides. The issue is very interesting here. One is that of the corruption in the judiciary, who is going to cleanse the judiciary when it comes to corruption. Second is the jurisdictional issue of Lokpal, which has had a tardy progress so far as anti-corruption agenda is concerned. Ever since Lokpal has been created, it has not been in controversy. This is the first controversy. Why no controversy? Because it has not been allowed to work properly. Lokpal has become more like a Lokpal. Right. Moving further, we have covered all this. So, UNESCO tentative list edition: Standing Stones of Mudumal in Telangana on tentative list of UNESCO World Heritage. So, menhirs or the standing stones of Mudumal in Narayanpet in Telangana have made it to the tentative list. So this is a factual news. What is the importance of these menhirs? The vertical standard sandstones kind of an structure. Nearly 1200 large sized stones standing vertically map the skies as it existed 3000 years ago. So here is the interesting thing. From these standing stones, we get to know the date and position of constellations of Leo, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, Virgo, Taurus, etc. So you see this structure. So menhirs in Mudumal in Narayanpet now are on the Telangana are on the UNESCO tentative list. A country is required to nominate the sites for the tentative list before they are actually considered by UNESCO for the World Heritage status. So this is placing the monuments on the tentative list of the country. India, in this case, our country, is the first step in case of final nomination by UNESCO as the World Heritage Site. Okay, so two things are important for preliminary perspective from the preliminary point of view. So what are these standing stones, menhirs? Where are they located? Mudumal district. Now, they were constructed when? Who was what dynasty was ruling it? You have to find out and answer in the comment section today. Okay, which dynasty was ruling it? So these factual details, many of the UPSC aspirants, they run from pillar to post looking for some uh, material which is a short material for UPSC to ask questions from, especially from the challenging areas like art and culture, science and technology. So the best preparation for UPSC factual part is to read the newspaper daily and pull out these type of details and make a note of it in your current affairs notebook. Now coming to international relations, the bilateral relations specifically, an area for GS mains paper 2. India and New Zealand began negotiating the comprehensive economic cooperation agreement in April 2010. But there was a lull, there was no round of discussion after 2015. Talking about the trade, as of now, the trade is around $850 million, just under $1 billion. So the potential is huge. The partnership has got dates back to 1970s. New Zealand had sent 100 cows to India when India was struggling with the milk revolution, with the white revolution, to boost milk production in the country, so as to make our country self-sufficient in the milk production. Now we are talking about the same issues. The free trade agreement will be discussed between the two sides, and the major bone of contention in the free trade agreement is the dairy production itself. What will be the tax rate, the customs duty levied by India on the dairy farming produce coming from New Zealand to India? There is a think tank which is known as Global Tank Research Institute Initiative. It says that India's proposed FTA with New Zealand would have limited benefits to domestic companies as they are already enjoying duty-free access that market for a significant number of goods. So with New Zealand, we are already having around 2.3% of the customs tax is the average tariff rate. 2.3% is the customs duty, average customs duty that New Zealand levies on goods coming from India. Whereas if the free trade agreement kicks in, as we call it as comprehensive economic cooperation agreement, then India would also have to reduce the customs duty, the tariff lines as we call it technically. India would also have to reciprocate. So this is the problem. Now, New Zealand's average import tariff is just 2.3% compared to India's 17.8% for the goods that are imported from New Zealand into India. Talking of the bilateral trade, as I said, bilateral trade between the two countries as of today stood at $850 million, 873. Roughly, you can memorize 853. Okay, exports from India 538 and imports from New Zealand $335 million. And the imports, the uptick in the trade saw the uptick in the trade was 26% between 2022 and 2023. In 26% increase has been there, but the potential is too high considering the level of trade that is just around $850 million, right? So we have a huge potential, and trade has stagnated, especially after 2019. There hasn't been much increase in the trade levels. Annual increase last year has been good, 26%, but this is not satisfactory. That is why, in the light of Donald Trump's tariff war, the US tariff war, all the countries are thronging the doors of India, are knocking at the doors of India so as to sign a free trade agreement. So that is why New Zealand is the next country. We already saw countries like European Union president had come to India, then UK's Prime Minister had visited India. Likewise, many other countries are knocking at the doors of India to sign an FTA with the burgeoning market of India, having a population of around 140 crore rupees, 140 crore people, and primarily the rising middle class phenomena of India. Talking about the main goods of export, India's key goods exports to New Zealand include clothing, fabrics, and home textiles, medicines, and medical supplies. The pharmaceutical companies of India are able to gain traction there. Refined petrol, agricultural equipment, and machinery such as tractors and irrigation tools. Mahindra and Mahindra, you can talk about. Auto, iron and steel, paper products, electronics, shrimps, diamonds, and basmati rice. Surat diamonds are also there. So remember, try to memorize a few details. Talking about the imports, agricultural goods, minerals, apples, kiwi fruit. Australia and New Zealand are famous for their kiwi fruit. Meat products such as lamb, mutton, albumin, lactose syrup, coking coal, logs and sawn timber, wool and scrap metals. So these are the items of import. The the exotic wood, etc. The wooden wares are quite popular from New Zealand. So these are the import items. If the FTA would be concluded according to GTRI, you can remember Global Trade Research Initiative says that the tariff line is 2.3%. Okay, the average tariff line for Indian goods into imported to New Zealand is 2.3%, whereas India is charging around 17.3% as customs duty to safeguard its own market from the flood of European Union, from the flood of New Zealand goods. So we are going to be at a loss if the FTA is concluded. Nonetheless, this is important. Now, talking about the China factor, the security partnership defense cooperation, New Zealand is equally concerned about Chinese interference or China making inroads into the Coco Islands. Where are the Coco Islands located? Please answer in the comment section. And India has been advocating for freedom of navigation from through the length and breadth of Indo-Pacific Ocean. And New Zealand being a member of, or New Zealand being located in the Pacific Ocean, espouses this cause equally, especially when it comes to the China threat. Right. So this is there. I have made a dedicated video on India-New Zealand relationship. This will be uploaded today on this same channel, PW Only IS English. You can watch this also. Now coming to this part, what factors influence women's political participation? So there are certain factors. Even though we are talking about women reservation bill in Lok Sabha, Rajya Sabha, increasing the reservation to 33%, 50% in the local bodies also. But what are the factors? So this is a good topic for GS Mains Paper 1, social issues. Feminism, which talks about equal participation of both the sexes. Feminism's generic definition is this: versus patriarchy in politics in India. The participation of women in Indian politics has been a subject of extensive discussion among scholars, politicians. Unlike many countries where the gender gap in political participation began narrowing in 1990s, the book writer says it is a kind of book review, but there are very good points for you to write an answer to this question. Why, despite reservation in local bodies, the what are the factors that influence women's political participation? So this can be a question. Now coming here, focus on barriers versus engagement. Discussions typically emphasize the social and cultural biases that prevent women's electoral success. Less attention is paid to how women actively participate in elections. So attention is not given at all. Writer also says that underexplored areas, women's voting patterns have not been explored. Even though we talk about the backward classes, with due respect, Yadavs, Gujars, Jats, how they are voting, but we never talk specifically about the women's voting patterns. Okay, let me be caste neutral. So all the how the Brahmins are voting, right? So all the caste voting patterns are analyzed, documented in the books in India by the scholars, but no dedicated study has ever been conducted on the voting pattern study of the women, their choices, why do they choose a particular candidate, and their influence on the election result, whether women are able to have some say in the outcome of the polls in a constituency, nothing like that. And then homogeneity assumption is there, the assumption that women as a single group are there. So when it comes to the general voting pattern, we categorize voters into Yadavs, Gujars, Kumars, Brahmins, etc. Okay, caste wise categorization. But when it comes to the voting of pattern of the women, it is seen as a cosmopolitan single group, uniform identical group. We don't see women as how SC women are going to vote, how ST women are going to vote, how general category, so-called general category women are going to vote. Okay, no caste bias whatsoever. Purpose is only to educate. Political parties and women's movements often treat women voters as a single uniform group, whereas they are also a diverse group, heterogeneous group, and they should be treated as such while any study is conducted on their voting pattern. This approach of homogeneity of women group ignores the significant impact of factors like caste, class, religion, and region. So Hema Malini may not be voting in the same lines as some other middle class women. Class factor, because she is Mercedes person and somebody else is just a household chores woman, right? Somebody who is engaged in the household chores all the time. So class bias, the how the urban class women vote, how the rural class women vote, how the Delhiites vote, and how the people in the hinterland of the country vote. So that categorization is not there. Increased women's voter turnout. A significant increase in the women voters turnout was observed in 2010, since political parties, because political parties, they targeted women with specific policies and schemes. And another observation, or you can say belief, amongst the political parties has been that women votes are primarily mobilized because of freebies, like 2000 rupees to be credited in the account of women, these type of schemes, like then free bus travel for women during Rakhi, or free cylinder for women. So these freebies are the ones that lure the women voters. Now 44 year, coming to the next issue here, rarest of the rare doctrine. Three people have been sentenced to death for 1981 killing of 24 Dalits in UP's Tihuli. Now this reinforces the usage of death penalty, even though the informally the Supreme Court was not using this for last 2 3 years. Now the same thing is back in fashion. The thing that started in Bachchan Singh case. Okay, in the Bachchan Singh case, for the first time, Supreme Court had propounded the doctrine of rarest of the rare cases while awarding the death penalty. The death penalty would be awarded only if the crime is rarest of the rare, and it would not be awarded in case of any crime which warrants death penalty, any statute which warrants death penalty. So this is a judicial innovation, rarest of the rare doctrine in Bachchan Singh case for the first time, right? So you can take a note of it. So the point here is, now the death penalty has again been revived as a form of punishment. Supreme Court in this judgment said that this awarding of death penalty will meet the two ends of the justice. Number one, the instilling of fear of law in the minds of perpetrators of such heinous crimes, instilling fear, and then doing justice with the families of the victim. Okay, doing justice with the families of the victims, the 24 people who were killed, Dalits who were killed, since it was a crime against the downtrodden section of society. So it warrants such kind of a punishment. So this was all in today's news analysis. Thank you. Have a good day, guys. Keep learning, keep studying. The day is not far when the success will be all yours. Thank you, guys.